He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
No mai whakarongo mai ki te aotai whenua. Welcome to Country Life. Ko Janina Schwaneka aho.
And I'm Duncan Smith. G'day. Great to have your company.
Today, we delve into the world of biodiversity credits. Is it a smart way of financing nature projects or just a vehicle for greenwashing?
Cosmo's on a sheep farm to find out about a Japanese composting system that's used to maintain healthy soils.
And sticking with soils, I meet a market gardener in Taranaki to learn about the art of making buttery soil.
But first, to a wrap of what's been making headlines on the Rural News Desk this week. Farmers are being urged to prepare for farm succession, with $150 billion of farm assets on the line. A new report from Rabobank says more than half of 17,000 farm and orchard owners will reach the age of 65 over the next decade. That means the sector must prepare to manage the largest ever intergenerational transfer of wealth in the next 10 years. Rabobank Chief Executive Todd Charteris says the traditional model of passing the farm on to the next generation is under pressure.
We surveyed 450 farmers across all different farm types and sizes. What we found there that there was only about a third actually have a formal succession plan in place. We also found that the financial obstacles aren't getting any smaller to farm ownership and transferring of that, but if anything, what we've seen is that may have plateaued over those years.
The research also found nearly 40% of farmers report having no children seriously interested in farming.
The country's largest meat processor, Silver Fern Farms, is pulling thousands of seasonal workers off the chain to match capacity with supply. Chief Executive Dan Bolton says the beef kill was down 4% in 2024 and lamb down 9%. He says low livestock flows, matched with high demand for red meat internationally, are a real challenge.
We're having to reduce capacity. We have about 3,000 of our workers on seasonal layoff right now, which normally would be running full steam as we work through the back end out of the cow season. And this creates a few issues. We're trying to attract workers into our sector, and that uncertainty around workforce is a real challenge.
Agri HQ says the North Island prime cattle flow has improved, with most plants full this week, but it's well back on previous years. The North Island's prime lamb flows have improved and even stabilised in the South Island, but that won't come close to reducing the deficit seen in the North Island of recent weeks.
New government funding for trainee teachers in rural and remote areas is being heralded as a good step forward. There'll be close to $500,000 available to support student teachers from next year. Andrew King of the New Zealand Rural Schools Leadership Association says rural recruitment is challenging due to the cost of living.
People have stopped looking at the benefits of it. We've fallen into that trap of, well, it's easier and more cost effective not to drive out of town. But actually there are so many benefits to working in a rural context. And by having these 130 or so places available will help change that thinking around rural schools.
The Egg Producers Federation has rejected claims that conditions in colony cage farms may increase the risk of disease. An international animal rights group, the Open Wing Alliance, has launched a campaign against caged egg production, saying it's harmful to chickens and creates conditions allowing disease, like avian influenza, to spread. Animals Aotearoa, which is part of the alliance, says colony cages aren't much better than battery or conventional cages, which were phased out of use in New Zealand by 2023. The Egg Producers Federation of New Zealand says the claims are nonsense.
Avian influenza is in the environment. It's actually our free-range operations that are most at risk from avian influenza. It's not the colony system that's going to be a major risk.
Fonterra is firmly against calls to exit the Paris Accord, with a senior manager warning such talk is dangerous. New Zealand is among nearly 200 countries which signed the International Climate Change Treaty nearly a decade ago. The farming group Groundswell has been campaigning for New Zealand to quit Paris, as it says the agreement pressures politicians to adopt economically destructive policies such as a farming tax. Fonterra's president of Global Ingredients, Richard Allen, says emissions reduction work is a key part of trading agreements.
And finally, This weekend marks the 100th trial of the Te Teko Cattle Dog Trial Club, and also the last. The Bay of Plenty event will see farmers and their dogs drive cattle through obstacle courses, rather than sheep, like in more common dog trials. Club President Beryl Gow, whose late husband held the presidency for 20 years, says the decline in cattle dogs marks changes in farming practices.
You know, there's not a lot of cattle dogs anymore. Everybody's in side-by-sides and they've got four-wheel motorbikes, and young guys just aren't doing the cattle dog thing anymore. People have just got busy. There's not a lot of dogs around, so we're just going to run our 100th for the last time, had a centenary lunch with a cake and run a dog trial as per normal during the day.
Beryl Gow says they're expecting about 250 to turn up to the event in Te Teko on Sunday. And that's your rural news for this week.
This is Country Life on RNZ National 101 FM.
You've probably heard of carbon credits. Well, what about biodiversity credits? The government this month said it's looking to support a voluntary biodiversity credit system to help fund the huge cost of restoring nature. That could be music to the ears of farmers and iwi wanting to do their bit for biodiversity, but facing the large expense of planting native forests or recreating wetlands. So what are biodiversity credits and how do they work? Sean Weaver is the chief executive of the firm Ecos, which announced its own scheme, BioCreditor, this week.
I wanted to develop a financing mechanism to enable community projects, landowners, larger projects to gain access to market-based financing, principally because there's just not enough money available in the grant funding world to do the biodiversity conservation that we need across the nation. And this is why markets are really valuable, because they're a larger source of money. But in order to get money from the private sector, you need to sell them something, and this is where biodiversity credits come in.
So what is a biodiversity credit?
So a biodiversity credit either represents a quantum of beneficial biodiversity change in an ecosystem that's measured, reported and verified, or it's a measure of biodiversity conservation output that will cause that change.
How much are these credits worth and who buys them?
Each project has to develop its own methodology for two things. First, the methodology for what the conservation management intervention is going to be. It might be invasive pest control, for example. It also has to develop a methodology for how it's going to measure the beneficial impact of that, but also measure how it's actually delivering that outcome. And what I'm describing here is the methodological foundations for our particular program, which is called BioCreditor. And we've developed that over the last 4 years, and we launched it this week. So we built a standard called the Ecos SD standard, which defines all of the things you need to do in order to demonstrate the benefits that you're delivering. And then we've built a registry, a digital registry on blockchain technology, so that these units can be issued once they've been verified to the standard, and then they can be tracked and traced across the transactions in the market. Who would buy them? The private sector is discovering that there's an increasing need to demonstrate corporate social responsibility and good corporate citizenship as part of just doing business. And this includes environment, social and governance reporting, or nature-based financial disclosure reporting. And this can be a necessity sometimes for gaining access to markets or gaining access to capital, where capital providers like banks or investment funds might say to prospective investees, look, show us that you're looking after the planet as part of your proposal for capital raise, and then if you're performing in this way, we'll give you access to capital, or we might give you access to lower interest rates or something like that. Similarly, there's a lot of competition in markets, especially foreign markets, and showing responsible corporate citizenship is part of that puzzle. The voluntary carbon market plays a role there, but also the biodiversity markets are now starting to play a role there. So the first buyer from the first project that we've developed was a window manufacturer, and who liked the idea of selling biodiversity-enriched windows, where the biodiversity portion doesn't come from the window factory, because they can't do much biodiversity conservation in the factory, but they can support a nearby project, which is what they've done.
And that's the Sanctuary Maungatautari project.
Yeah, Sanctuary Mountain Maungatautari is the first project in the ECOS Bioccreditor program, and it's gone through the entire process of project development, measurement, reporting, verification, credit issuance, and credit sales, and then revenue generation from those sales as a proof of concept for this market. Now we want to open it up, on the one hand, so that this first project can sell all of the credits that it's producing each year, and that we can then create enough demand to support many other projects.
So if a farmer or iwi wanted to recreate a wetland or plant more native forest, how much feasibly could they earn, and how often would they get paid if they got into biodiversity credits?
Yeah, so again, like farming, you've got to produce your farm products every year, and then you sell them every year to raise the revenue to cover the cost of annual production. And so the point of selling biodiversity credits is to generate revenue to cover the cost of biodiversity conservation management. So it's not about making money as such, it's about generating revenue to undertake a conservation activity that otherwise wouldn't happen because there's just not enough grant funding in the country to fund all of the biodiversity conservation that we want to do. And so that's the whole point. It's not really like a gold rush of, well, how much money can I make out of selling these things? Everybody in the value chain in our program has to make a profit, but nobody is allowed to make a super profit, like an unjustifiable super profit. And the main reason for that is that the end user of biodiversity credits is buying a conservation outcome, and they want to be confident that they're funding the true cost of looking after the place and not funding, somebody's super profit that will help them just buy another yacht. So it's essentially a fair trade market, the way that we've set this up. And what they make is really essentially what is the cost recovery required for that project. And if they sell all their units, then they will recover that cost, and then they can keep going as a form of sustainable financing. In a way, it's providing a farmer, in principle, with just another form of farming and a revenue stream to cover the cost of that form of farming on those parts of the farm that are probably better off farming biodiversity than farming beef or lamb, for example.
Sean Weaver of ECOS speaking to Sally Round. Sean mentioned Sanctuary Mountain Maungatautari there. It's one of the pilot projects which the government is studying to see how biodiversity credits could work best for New Zealand and what sort of rules might be needed. To find out more, Sally popped into the Ministry for the Environment and spoke to Hayden Johnston, who's the General Manager for the Natural Environment.
I think a credit could be a great tool for a catchment group where they've got a problem, whether it might be browser species or pest control, and they want to group together to do something at a big scale that they think will be able to show improvements over time. Benefits them on the land and it benefits the wider region. So what they would do is they would collaborate, they would design a project, and under the models that we're testing at the moment, there would be a company that would verify that project, and then they would put it out to the market to see who wanted to buy it. With the pilots, we're trying to help facilitate the buyers alongside the sellers.
And what if a farmer has already done some work? Can they get biodiversity credits for those?
The model that we're looking at is about additional effort. So it would be about the new efforts on top of the existing stuff. But it would be an opportunity to find new ways to finance or fund, that new effort.
What sort of money could be gained for a landowner by using these credits?
Well, it will depend on what the credit product is. To be honest, I think in the early phases, it's not about generating new investment returns. It's really about funding. They're finding a different way to fund the efforts that they're already undertaking.
Why should the private investor be involved in this? Surely this is a public good. Wouldn't it best be done by government, who could make sure there weren't issues around greenwashing, for example?
Yeah, this talks to the point of what is the role of government in the space. Obviously, the government does provide funding to restore and enhance nature, primarily through the Dock Conservation Estate. We know, though, that there are private investors who want to support nature, and really what we're trying to do here is help provide the guardrails for a tool that they might want to.
So what sort of guardrails are we talking about?
Principles like transparency, so the buyer knows exactly what they're buying, additionality, so that what they're buying is clearly an additional benefit from what would have happened otherwise, longevity, so that the action or the outcome will occur over a longish period of time.
Are you looking at this stage at overseas examples? I know that Australia, for instance, has launched this year its nature repair market.
Yeah, we're watching the international space quite closely, particularly Australia and the nature repair market, but also looking at the UK and other models as they develop. Probably the key thing we are looking at is what are those principles that underpin the products that they are selling, because they are different. Some countries have legislated for these products. Some countries look at them at a project scale, whereas others are trying to understand the individual outcomes for biodiversity.
Have you picked up any ideas or issues from the pilot projects that are underway so far?
One of the things I'm really keen we test is how you can do this in a way that is cost effective. We know that examples of projects that are using international verification, for example, can be quite costly, and we want to find ways to make this an available tool in New Zealand for New Zealand circumstances.
Yeah, because I imagine farmers in particular would not want another layer of red tape to deal with.
No, that's right. And at this point, what we're looking at is a voluntary market whereby farmers can group together of their own free will and volition to develop a project and package it in a way that might attract financial investment. So we're aware of that kind of duplication issue. At the moment, we're quite comfortable that we're on the right track.
And would there be some kind of central registry, do you think, for these credits?
That's something we're looking at. I think that would be a good idea, but it's sort of in the future pipeline.
But there are sceptics around this, and the Campaign for Nature says, there's real issues around biodiversity credit markets, scalability, integrity. Is it possible to create a foolproof system?
Well, we're trying to create a positive system in New Zealand, put in place some guardrails that don't currently exist, and work through the pilots to test some of those things and make sure we can provide sufficient guidance or rules as necessary for that. Yes, there are sceptics, but also I think we're approaching it in the right way. We're looking at best practice internationally and trying to bring that to New Zealand and apply it in a New Zealand context.
Hayden Johnston, General Manager for the Natural Environment at the Ministry for Environment. He was talking to Sally Round.
Now we're heading to a farm in North Canterbury, where farmers Tim Hawke and Murray Weaver operate, on a large scale, a composting system that uses fermentation to break down organic waste. Cosmo Kentish Barnes chats with Tim Hawke to find out more.
We're in White Rock, which is 22 k's northwest of Rangiora, just under the foothills, and we've got 500 acres here, and I'm since retired in the last 5 years, and Murray Weaver's taken over as leasing the farm, and we work together still in the management. I'm just aware of what's happening and encouraged by what's happening with what Murray's been doing. Yeah.
And we are standing beside a huge pile of compost.
Yes, it's very different to compost. It's Bokashi, which when you put compost down, you put 100 tonne down, you get about 30 tonne back. Whereas Bokashi, put 100 tonne down, we get 100 tonne of good material back. It's like silage, it works in an anaerobic environment, so it doesn't have the air in there, and it doesn't get any hotter than about 30 degrees. So you haven't got the heat in it, you haven't got the loss of energy, and we put a lot of water on it, and we use EM. So that's effective microorganisms. They're a organism that works within the soil with the fungi and the bacteria, and they help the soil to grow.
You need EM to make Bokashi.
You do with Bokashi, yes, because it's anaerobic and it's the way it works to break down and join all the products in that mix. And we try and source stuff locally, like chook manure and pig manure and sawdust is a good one. And then we're able to get some milk sweepings, and that adds nitrogen and protein to the mix to feed the microorganisms to make everything work. And we put a lime in there as well, just a wee bit of lime to keep the acidity right. And it creates a good mix.
What's the history behind Bokashi? Who first started doing it? Where does it come from?
It comes from Japan, and we're very fortunate that we've got a guy in Christchurch, Paul Daly, from Effective Microorganisms New Zealand.
Oh, so that's where you get the little bugs from?
Yes, and we expand the bugs to make them work. And we use them here in Bokashi as well as a probiotic. We put it on the pasture. And we would use it too with drenching the animals with it, putting it in their water troughs, and it was changing the whole dynamics of the farm. The animals were happier and healthier, easier to handle, and producing more from that.
So going back, Tim, why did you first start looking at this Bokashi system?
I had a kind of, a what-if moment. I got to a stage where farming, I just couldn't get the number of sheep off mum. I couldn't fatten my lambs the same. I was wondering if this was not an ideal spot for sheep farming. And then I went along to a field day that Federated Farmers organised with Nicole Masters and Rob Flynn was there from Soil Matters. And I happened to start talking to him, and I invited him out, and we did a little farm tour. And then that's when I started looking at putting fish oil on.
So prior to that, you were using chemical fertilisers?
I would get my fertiliser company to come up, and they would just say, what's your carrying capacity? This is what you need to put on, and then walk away. And it didn't satisfy what I was wanting to achieve at all. And I questioned them, well, why don't we do a soil test and then work out what we put on? But no, this is what you do, and walked away. So that's why I looked further into it and discovered that there's more to it. And then within 12 months, the clover growth was increasing.
Within 12 months of first using this Bokashi system?
More or less more biological farming than Bokashi. Bokashi came into it, and with that we were putting on grana fertilisers and building up the lime a bit more and putting organic sulphur on, spreading that around. With the fish oil as well, complementing the microorganisms in the soil, the fungi and the bacteria.
What did other farmers back then think about what you were doing?
Their first comment, so what, well, I suppose witchy poo. Are you putting that on there? You're using cow horns and stuffing them and putting that around. And I was looking at the scientific side of it. The results were there if you look. And, eventually my scanning percentage on the ewes increased from about 160 up to 200%. And we were weaning about 170% lambing. And I was getting 50% of those lambs that were killable off mum to the works. And that was encouraging.
So Bokashi became an important part of the new system.
Very much part of the system in the sense it was feeding the organic matter into the soil and feeding the worms.
Is there a huge comparison when you think about worm counts prior to going biological?
Oh yes, very much. You either were lucky to find them, or because the soil was so dense they would be hiding down. Now you dig it up and they're quite freely moving around, and they're healthier worms, bigger worms.
Yes.
And that's just a normal everyday worm that's out there, and you think, didn't realise there's so many out there.
Murray, you've taken over the running of the farm. What do you farm here?
We've got 1,200 sheep, including hoggets, and 150 dairy heifers that we graze.
What attracted you to this property?
Well, I was basically lucky enough to get offered to lease the place because Tim wanted to retire, So I was in the right place at the right time. When he first told me about Bokashi and the EMs and all that, I thought all sorts of silly things. But I'm a visual person, and I can noticeably see over the years how things are better. And it certainly works for us, so we've kept along with the same lines.
How much Bokashi did you make last year?
We made 120 tonnes of it last year. We put it round over 40 odd hectares. You can't see anything overnight, but over time it certainly improves things. And grass growth, like Tim was saying, and stock are healthier.
And so how do you make the Bokashi? What do you put in it?
I've got friends in the transport companies, and if they've got stuff to dump that's suitable for us, they ring me up and see if they want it bought here, like sawdust. We've got some here. And
there's a big pile there.
Yeah, and there's a few horsey people around Lowburn that have got piles of horse manure that they want to get rid of. So we just said yes.
And someone gave you at least a dozen bales of baleage. That's going in as well.
Yes, it is. We had to pay to cart it here because it was rotten, so they wanted to get rid of it.
The more rotten, the better, I guess.
Yeah, it is. And we're lucky enough that Tim's brother lives just next door here. He's got a truck and a digger, and he can backload or pick stuff up for me from time to time.
Yes.
So we bring it all here and put it in its little piles. Then when we do a mix up, he comes and mixes it all up, pats it down. We put the cover over it, put some tyres over it, and leave it for at least 3 months. This has been here for over 6 months. It should have gone on this season, but the rains beat us a wee bit, but that's fine. It's not going anywhere.
So, it's a lovely dark colour.
Yeah, well, it was all sorts of stuff when we mixed it up, but now it just looks like dirt and it's full of worms, isn't it? So that's what we're looking for. And I like to put it on when it's the ground's damp, so the worms get down under the ground as soon as possible. Everyone you saves, everyone you can does its job. So that's what we're looking at.
Tim, what are some of the more unusual products you've put into this mixture?
We had a supply of apples. The first time we tried putting apples in, we were about 30 tonne at the time. We pickled them, and it had quite an aroma about it. So that aroma went round the district for a week after we spread it, but it was gone within a very short time. Milk powder was something that we come across. We get it by the tonne, sweepings, and then we mix it in. Like Murray was saying, we're very fortunate. My brother Ken has a digger, and we double dump it, and that's something we learnt as we went on, that mixing makes a big part of it. More that we mix it and the more water we put on, the better the product at the end of the day. And the very first one I did was just a layer of chicken manure and a layer of straw and a layer of chicken manure and a layer of straw. I only had little patches of good spots. And then, like this last one now, it's like soil when it comes out.
And how many tonnes are sitting in front of us here?
We estimate 80 tonne. We work on truckloads of material coming in, and we would probably put 6 pods of water on there, so that's 6 tonne of water. So it all adds up, and you can work out how many pods of milk powder you put on. So we mix it up that way.
One other thing we did put in one time is we put in some daggy wool, because the wool wasn't worth anything, so we put it on with a muck spreader. We threw it out on the paddocks, and I'm going, oh no, it's not my normal style, because I hate seeing stuff lying around all over the place. But within a week it had broken down and it was gone. And in the Bokashi, you grab a bit and you pull it apart and it breaks real easy.
There's probably some goodness in there too, I'd say.
Oh yes, the protein. We're very fussy on the fact that we look at what we source to put in. For example, we got involved with Selwyn District Council, and they wanted to look at how they could do something with their garden waste. So they brought a couple of truckloads over and we made some Bokashi. But we discovered we had a lot of plastic in it, and different types of products, as well as, when you start getting lawn clippings and the like from residential areas, they use a lot of sprays in their gardens, and those sprays don't break down. An example is Versatile. It has a long withholding period, and that's something that would kill a lot of our clovers and things if we're putting it out.
Gosh, so you have to be quite careful.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Is it cheaper to make Bokashi than to buy chemical fertiliser?
Well, I did do my homework a few years ago, and it cost me $26 a tonne to get it spread on the paddock. By the time I got it here mixed up, because it's the cartage cost that comes into a lot of it, mixed up, cured, and back out onto the land. So it's on a par. It is on a par to solid fertilisers, but the benefits are amazing, what we do get out of it.
Murray, if a farmer is listening to this and is thinking, oh, I wouldn't mind trialling some Bokashi, what would you say to them?
I was go for it. Yeah. Just not around here, so you take my stuff, that's all. But yeah, no, just go for it. And try a little bit for a start. Look at it for 12 months and just see the difference. You won't see it overnight, but you'll see it within 12 months.
And I guess you were lucky because you could come onto the farm and Tim had already set up a large-scale system.
Yes, he had, yeah. Yeah, well, when we first came here, we went and dug around in a few paddocks, and some paddocks that hadn't been much on, the root growth of the grass was only down a couple of inches or centimetres. But then when we've gone to some paddocks that have had a reasonable amount put on, the roots were down a foot.
When there are droughts, that must make a huge difference.
Oh, it does. It's huge. We get a lot of people come past here going, why is your place so green?
How many tonnes per hectare do you use?
About 4.
About 4?
Yeah. You can put it on heavier, but one of our soil girls that came round and was talking in the early stages, she suggested we spread it out further, which we did, and I think it's still done as good a job as any. Yep.
You know, the place is looking better than it did when I was running it, and to see this happening and to see the feed about and the stock health, and we've got a good relationship, and that's a bonus in leasing out your farm.
Tim Hawke there, chatting about Bokashi at his North Canterbury farm. Cosmo was also talking to the farm's current leaseholder, sheep farmer Murray Weaver.
My name is Woodsy. I'm the maker of Woodsy Rockers. I'm from Taranaki. You are listening to Country Life on RNZ National.
When Jody Roebuck and his wife Tanya first moved to Ormata, just south of New Plymouth, the land was just a bare paddock. Since then, the 3-hectare site has been transformed into a lush market garden, growing a range of greens and vegetables for local restaurants and sellers. The key to this dramatic revitalisation started deep underground.
So this is homemade compost. It takes about 9 months, a couple of turns. Carbon's really one of the key inputs into it, which is mature plants. So all our cover crops we compost. Our friend's organic farm, we get old hay, old silage, and our 2 neighbours deliver horse manure, and we combine all that and keep it under about 60 Celsius at the peak temp. And then after turning, we cover it with a tarp so it doesn't get too wet in winter. It's still, I'd say, the key part of our production for having beautiful coloured, gorgeous tasting produce. And our garden beds, one analogy is they're like chocolate cakes. We trained a man from Georgia, the country, and we're on a volcanic ash subsoil. In 1975 we knew this, they removed our topsoil, but it opens up nice with a fork that we've designed, and then we compost it, and my Georgian friend said, your soil is like butter.
It's so soft.
We like butter too.
Jody Roebuck is an internationally renowned biointensive gardening educator and restoration grazing consultant. He spent the past 3 decades travelling the world, learning from and teaching others.
There was nothing, no tree, house fence. Our girls were both young. Tanya, my wife, was pregnant with Rata, our second, when we moved here. So we relocated the original house, and we had to get that livable before we lived here. Working off farm, no time, sound familiar, and just started from the beginning. And we started just with rudimentary hand tools, a tiny fork and rake, and developed the first garden out front of the house for seed production. I did my apprenticeship at Koanga Institute when I was young, and we did also a lot of cover cropping for soil improvement, which is an easy way to put the garden to sleep. And then just carried on. I've always been working farm related. I've worked with friends' businesses, calf dehorning, contract fencing. I really enjoy my grazing work, and I was travelling teaching around the world of the homesteading. Did a lot more grazing work with that, which is now called Regen Ag, and in a lot of dry climate.
And so how long have you been here on the home farm for?
We bought the bare land September 04, so 20 years.
And amazing to see what you've done with it since. And do you feel you got a little head start in terms of obviously being based in the Taranaki region with all the beautiful fertile volcanic soil. Does that help? Or
Yeah, for sure, it's beautiful soil. For vegetables, probably on a normal year, probably a bit too much rain. That's why we've built our greenhouses. No, it's beautiful, and it's my connection here. All our family supports here. In the last few years, I've realised we've built the family farm with our family from scratch, and my holidays surfing, and my father surfs, my daughter surfs. We're 5 k's from the ocean, so that's me in the evenings.
Across various garden beds and inside greenhouses, Roebuck Farm grows a range of green goodies, including lettuce, mustard, kale, rocket zucchini, microgreens, radishes, carrots, turnips, onions, and more. They also run a few dozen sheep which graze on the property and neighbouring land. Crop rotation is a key part of the farm's management.
So these are our summer cover crops. Some of them we mix, some of them are single. They're not mixed, just so we can terminate them and replant the next cover crop easier. In summer we do a lot of buckwheat, and that brings in, it's drought tolerant, fast, suppresses weed pressure, and it's got a beautiful long flowering window, and it brings in all the predator insects and bees. A lot of daikon in as well. They're great deep tap roots, so they bring up nutrients from down deep, and long flowering window, great for the compost. So everything we cut off and compost and then drill the next cover crop. Prior to, let's say, COVID, we actually didn't have the space with our sales demand to be cover cropping. So as we transitioned to this property, definitely in winter we did a lot of cover cropping. As the vegetable sales just grew and grew, we backed off from cover cropping. We're on average doing 4 successions of vegetables in the same ground a year, and 6 indoors in the greenhouse. And then just with the economy change, we've got, and as we're expanding with the new greenhouses, we've got the space to come back to cover cropping. We're really enjoying it.
Jodie's also an early adopter of regenerative agriculture practices. Regenerative agriculture is a holistic approach which emphasises greater biodiversity and protecting the soil.
When we run a lot of education, we say to people, they might be home gardeners, and we say we're no different than a home garden. We're hand tools, all the principles are the same. I'll come to that. Covering the ground at all times. Deep living soil allows you to grow more plants in that given area, and then always having the soil covered with intensive planting, and also with covers. Like if we are direct seeding, we'll water it and just simply cover it with a layer of 70% shade net, just straight on the ground. Protects the soil. You might have hail or drought, hot temps. You get really good germ underneath, and then after the germination's up, we take the shade net off. That stuff kind of lasts forever. And we're using the Redpath cloche system with you can put any fabric on that. We're using insect net, which is for insects, but really it's fantastic for driving rain, big winds. Insects also. And so all of these covers are portable, mobile.
when you say protecting the soil, that's really protecting the microorganisms in the soil that are contributing to the plant health when you look to grow. Is that right?
Yeah, one of my mentors says public enemy number one is bare soil. We've all seen erosion on ground that's either grazed too hard too often, like the East Coast with Cyclone Gabrielle. So yeah, we've always got the ground covered. With the economy the way it is, we don't need all our garden beds, and so to put these gardens to sleep with the direct seeders, the precision seeders we've got, like the Jang seeder, it's really quick. And yeah, there's very little empty garden or bare soil year round. If there is, we're covering it.
And as you mentioned, you've also taken some of the growing inside to help work around some of the conditions that you might face here, particularly the heavy rainfall. Should we go take a look in some of the pop our heads in some of the greenhouses?
Sure. So this is our microgreens house. The fan runs 24/7. It just helps with air circulation. And we do all the propagation in here. We make our own seed raising mix. Top secret recipe, half garden soil, half homemade compost through the sifter. Grows beautiful, and for transplants, grows beautiful plants. And we fill the trays. We've got a Perspex box that drops the seeds on the tray. We stack them on top of each other with a big concrete weight on top, and that after seeding and watering, that really forces them to germinate fast and even. So there's 20 trays, or approximately in that stack with a 20 kilogram brick on top. If I don't do anything and leave them, they'll germinate and lean out and throw the brick off.
So it's about putting the plants under a bit of stress, forcing them to work,
Makes them germinate real fast and even. With all of our fast crops on the farm, I applied this thinking from my grazing plan. We are tracking our days to maturity, we call that DTM. So when we seed a tray of microgreens, the whole stack will be one variety. I just put some green tape on one tray. It's got the name and time of the day, not the date, the variety, and then we know our current DTM, date to maturity, and we've got the harvest day on it as well. So when we come in here, we're just looking for that green tape, and we can see how long it's taking, when it's ready, and that's really a big part of being small scale. It's common to go to a restaurant and say, I'd love to produce this for you, and I'm a half acre, and they're like, how could you possibly grow enough and be consistent? And I think for us, the consistency really comes from understanding how long things are currently taking to grow, and then the flexibility with salad mix. It's called leaves and shoots, the same salad, but you'll never see the same version probably ever again.
And can you tell me what you have growing in here, I suppose?
So we've got, we grow 3 radishes, all different colours, and 1 daikon. So the Violetta radish is a dark pink stem and a green top. The daikon has a white stem and a lighter green leaf. And the sangria, the red one, a deep red. And so all our salads in the field, we've got baby mizuna that's red and green, lettuce that's red and green. We grow them all separate, harvest them separate, process them separate, so that we can then, we're servicing about 15 outlets, and some of them order unmixed salad, and then everything left over is the surplus, and I use my eye to measure. We measure once and then I should be able to eyeball it. So a container of salad's 4.5 kgs. Let's make the numbers easy. After restaurant sales, so we've got 10 containers of salad before mixing. That's still 10 containers afterwards. 35 retail salads in a container, so there's 350 retail salads just by looking at it. It helps. They're fast crops, they're fast learners.
I can see, yeah.
So 6 days in summer to grow the microgreens, 12 in winter.
And I suppose having them in a greenhouse as well helps with that consistency and keeping that growing time as short as possible.
100%, and just protecting them from rain and wind. And it's in a normal year we're 2.3 metres of rain, sometimes more. It's a really nice place to work when it is raining.
Be inside, I can imagine. Yeah.
Jody shows how he harvests the microgreens. Another example of how a bit of ingenuity and having the right tools for the job can make a big difference.
A piece of wood on an angle with a handle and wheels on the back. And we're going to just put the microgreens on that tray and cut uphill. And so we take everything to the microgreens. I'll put my container in there with wheels. Greens harvester. And then I'm just going to cut. And that's it. This one's actually ready tomorrow. It'll be about 0.5 kilogram on there in 6 days. And now I can empty these out. And we just carry on down, keep putting trays on top, cutting them into the containers, off to the jacuzzi, wash and pack, give them the spa treatment.
Amazing.
So again, this is not designed for microgreens, but why would you only cut field salad with it?
Yeah, and it's just a very clever system. As you say, you've got the catcher, you've got the drill, and then is that just like an old mop head, or is that something you've made yourself?
This here?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's the ropes. This is like, I guess, version 3. Elliot Coleman, 4-season farm in Maine, he changed the small scale industry single-handedly. He's about 83 now, and so these tools are only about just over 20 years old. But surface cultivation, precision seeding, especially for us with salad, the 6-row seeder and the quick cut greens harvester are all his inventions. But he didn't do the fabrication because he said to me, if I started a tool company, I wouldn't be able to farm. So he'll get a royalty on each one, but yeah, he conceived and worked with the companies as they developed them.
And I mean, that was so fast. That was seconds to cut a whole tray of microgreens in what would probably take, with scissors or something more manual, much, much longer. So and just a clean cut as well, and consistent too.
No waste. And so the whole farm's run off battery drills. No diesel. We deliver within 10 kilometres. That's just the way it's worked out. We didn't start with those values, but we deliver everything 10 k's away into New Plymouth, city of 80,000. We're supplying about 15 different places, and we know we can produce more food as our sales allow us to. It's not. We don't need more land. We need more sales. We do about 20 different crops in summer, but the one that really drives revenue in this less amount of days is baby salad. Why we like to wash it, there's seed hulls in there. The jacuzzi will separate those out, and the final moisture content of the salad really helps with the shelf life. So that's all done in a controlled environment. The wash and pack is a big part of our work, the wash and pack process.
And we're going to go there, I understand, and have a look at what you've been doing, making that more efficient.
Look in there.
From the greenhouse, the salad is transferred to the wash and pack shed, where it's cleaned up.
Every time we can increase shelf life or saleable days, it's a good thing. So coriander we harvest with the root on, and then we pre-wash that at the outdoor wash and pack, and then it comes in for final inspection on the drying screen, and we just adjust the moisture level on it to what we're looking for. We package that. It's good 3 weeks. Root veg gets pre-washed outside with a blue spray gun and then a water blaster.
Just to get all the dirt outside and keep it outside.
Yeah, so dirty stuff stays outside, and then we grade the carrots, grade 1 baby carrots for a restaurant, and then smaller or bigger we can sell them in retail. And carrots is probably outside of salad, is definitely our biggest, it's work, but it's our biggest sales. We're sold every carrot we grow, about 400,000 carrots a year. And when we started it on day 3 of COVID at Pack and Save New Plymouth, we've got our own fridge in there, and they were like, we didn't think you were going to sell any carrots at that price. Now they're affordable. We sold every carrot we ever put in there, and we're getting treated like rock stars on deliveries, especially by mums. They're saying, hey, thank you, we love your produce. Our kids are eating vegetables again, and we buy your carrots for their school lunches.
That's really lovely feedback to have, and to know the impact of what you're doing.
It's nice. The feedback's beautiful. We being appreciated. Farming's not the easiest task. We love it, but having the customer appreciation is real special.
And so talk me through the setup that you've got in here.
So we're wash and pack faces away from the sun, opens on the south, and it's completely insulated. We don't want... field heat is the enemy of shelf life. So we harvest salad early in the morning, and then we've made a stainless steel jacuzzi to wash the salad, so that separates out any soil, if there was an insect, a seed hull. If it's heavy, it sinks, and if it floats, there's a dead zone in the far corner of the jacuzzi where we can pull screen the floaties out. That's an amazing... otherwise you have a full-time employee with long gloves thrashing around in the water. And so the basic process for salad is wash, spin, and then dry. And the final drying is the real detail in the shelf life. And so if we're in Taranaki, it's wet and humid. If it's low temp, high humidity, we will spin longer and just really focus our attention there. But if it's low humidity and hot, it's a whole different thing. So there's no magic time. And then we track everything, our orders from restaurant. They're the only orders we have, actually. I do that all by telephone, and we're the delivery person. So we give them updates. Hey, this crop will be ready in 2 weeks. This one's finishing in 2 weeks. We dine at our restaurants we supply. We're 2 of them on the farm. And then currently the majority of our business is retail, but a good 80% of it. All of the 80% overflow becomes the salad mix. We still sell unmixed items as well, and like we can sell straight lettuce, we can sell straight microgreens, but the mix is 75% of our salad sales, and the mix gives us the flexibility. We built all of this. I've got a design background, but we built all this on site with our builders, and my father, he's a ex-electrician, made the walk-in chiller from scratch. We talked earlier, we don't want nothing in our chiller, we want it across town.
Yeah, as fresh as possible for the consumer.
Yeah, and it's a nice space to work in.
Jodie Roebuck I was speaking to there at Roebuck Farm in Ormata, just south of New Plymouth. You can find photos and more information about our stories today on our webpage, rnz.co.nz/countrylife. And that's this week's Country Life. Thanks for joining us. You can also find photos and more information about the stories in this episode in our show notes. We love getting your feedback and ideas for future stories. You can reach us, country@rnz.co.nz.
And we'd hate for you to miss an episode of Country Life. To get every episode free to your phone, click follow on your app now. And if you enjoyed our show, give us a shout on social media or tell a friend by clicking the share button in this app.
Out in the field today were myself, Sally Round and Cosmo Kentish Barnes.
The show was produced and engineered by David Knowles and William Saunders. Ka kite.
Catch you next time.